Uh, yes, sure. So I think the topic for today is generally how to qualify as a lawyer here in Canada. I'll obviously be using my experience as as an example and just sharing the journey and the process with all of you. Before we begin, I'll just start off by saying, a little about me in a nutshell. So essentially, I am a corporate lawyer, or as you say, an in-house counsel, and I work for a company that would be the legal department of a company. And I was, or rather, I am qualified in India, and I also am qualified in New York as well because I did my LLM from the US. And then after that, I worked for a few years and moved to Canada. And I had to go through the whole process of giving exams and writing bar exams and qualifying here as a lawyer. So after many exams, I finally found myself being what they call here as called to the bar. So I was called to the bar in 2022. And I started the process actually in 2018, but because of the pandemic and because I was working full time, it took me a few years, took me about 2 years to complete the entire exam process. So I thought I'll give you that background before I begin that this is what I'm doing. Here's the end goal. And now we can go backwards and kind of start with the process in mind. So anybody who is thinking of basically coming to Canada or thinking of becoming a lawyer, they have to actually apply for what is called as an assessment. So yeah, maybe what we'll do is I'll go through everything, and then if you have like any, I noticed somebody raised their hand. If you have any questions or anything, you can put it in the chat, and then we'll answer everything so that I can get through whatever material I have. Hope that approach is okay with everyone. Um, so yeah, coming back to the process. So what essentially you have to do is you have to apply for an assessment. And what that assessment does is they look at the degrees that you've earned, and they determined whether how many more exams you have to give further based on the degree that you have. So let's say, using me as an example, at the point that I applied, I had a bachelor's, or if you want to think like a BCom. And then on top of that, I had the LLB from Jindal, and I also had the LLM at that point. So they said, okay, well, you've got these degrees, so please send us the transcripts from all the universities that you've been to. And on the basis of this, our assessment report says that you need to give 5 further exams, which were in a whole bunch of subjects like constitutional law, administrative law, foundations of Canadian law, Canadian constitutional law, and professional responsibility. These were the 5 exams I gave. Now, typically, what happens is if somebody doesn't have an LLM like myself, they still may be able to get that 5 examination requirement, and they may be able to come here and do an LLM and kind of waive that off. So people usually do the LLM when they come here as a, like, instead of doing the NCA exams. It's possible to do that, but we won't go into that detail necessarily because that's not my journey. I already had an LLM and I used the exams and then eventually moved forward. Yeah. So, oh, I think we have Alicia as well. Hi, I think you're finally able to join. Yeah, so I was just sort of walking everybody through how I started off my process. Um, so anyway, so the first step is you do the assessment. Then you, like in my case, I got the 5 exams which I had to do, and so I did started the process in 2018 in September, and the assessment report can take some time. Like, can take about 2 to 3 months, maybe even longer, because now so many more people are applying for the assessment. And so once you're done with that, then you need to start the process of preparing for those exams. So how you would start preparing is you would go to the website. So the NCA stands for the National Committee of Accreditation. So you would go to their website, and they have the syllabus that's put on the website itself. So my suggestion would be to just download it, take a printout, highlight whatever is important for you. And usually people try to take the all the exams at once, But if you're working full time or you're studying, what may be helpful is to break it up. So maybe don't do all of them at once. Try to do them one at a time. Like you could do one exam, then once you are done with it, you can start preparing for another. Doing it in that phased approach will make it less overwhelming for you and also increase your probability of passing. So again, I'll use myself as an example. It was sort of peak COVID at that point. Everybody was indoors. This was 2020, a very different world from what we are in. And I thought that was the first time the examination had actually become remote. Earlier, you had to go to a test center like in Delhi or wherever, based on wherever you were, and you would have to sit in an exam room and write the exam. But that was the first year they were trying out this remote approach, and I believe it's still being offered remotely. So I gave all the five exams at once. And in hindsight, I would have actually done it in the phased approach that I'm talking about. My approach was that I just want to be done with it, right? I don't want to delay this process further. So, but what ended up happening is I cleared four exams and I did not clear one of them because I had a bad day. I was probably not as well prepared for Canadian constitutional law, and I had to then give that exam a few months later and go through that not so pleasant process of studying again. So that's why my advice to anybody thinking of the NCA process is do it in a phased approach. And the biggest question that people ask is, okay, how do I even get started? Like, what are the resources? How does one study? What's the kind of preparation that's required? So my quick 2 cents on that would be focus on the syllabus. They tell you exactly what you're supposed to do. There are a lot of companies that offer very good notes. You can even ask some people who have done them, in the previous years. If you don't necessarily want to spend that money, you can get a copy of those notes and you can use that as a guide because it's an open book exam. So you don't need to necessarily memorize everything, but what you need to have is a good conceptual understanding. So, and if since it's open book, you can have your notes in front of you, have your highlights, your sticky notes, whatever you need, and you just need to know where to go in your notes and then use that to formulate answers. Typically, I personally, if you ask me, anybody who is a Jindal student or an Indian law student, I would say that we're kind of used to writing these long answers, and we are used to writing like essays and short notes and those sorts of things. So I typically you'll find that it's not that difficult to write, but because it's a completely new system, it's a new country, we don't necessarily know the laws and policies, and sitting outside, especially when you're trying to do that, it can be a little overwhelming. So give yourself time. I would say at least a couple of months in an ideal situation, and use that time period to make yourself more familiar. So what I would do, I remember, is there was actually a very good podcast, interestingly, on administrative law and constitutional law, because I was not very fond of these subjects when I was in law school. I'll be completely honest. When I had to study them again, I was like, oh God, I have to go through the same ordeal again. And what I used to do is I used to listen to a podcast on Canadian administrative law and Canadian constitutional law, and that just made the material a little bit more relatable than I could, eventually like having to read all that text. And if you are working full time and you're trying to study, then it is that much more challenging. So just those were my quick study tips on how to go ahead. Now I'll walk you through what was the next step. So I got my results. I didn't clear one exam. I had to then plan to give it again, which happened in January of 2021. And after clearing them finally, you get something what is called as a certificate of qualification. So that essentially tells you and tells whoever needs to know that you have cleared these five exams. You are now equivalent based on your foreign qualifications to a Canadian law graduate. But the buck, it still goes on. There's still two more things that you need to do, which is you need to appear for two more exams, which are barrister and solicitor exams that anybody who has studied law here as well would have to do in order to become licensed. So in case you're already you're like, wow, that was like five exams plus another two exams. That would be, yes, it would be seven exams in total in an ideal setting. So once you finish your five exams, you clear all of them, you have that certificate of qualification. You will take that certificate of qualification and submit it to the Law Society of Ontario, or whichever province you want to go to. Let's assume it's Ontario because I'm in Ontario. It's easier to explain. So you take that certificate, you submit it to the Law Society, and they say, okay, thank you. Now you are eligible to write the barrister and solicitor exams. So I started preparing for those exams. And unfortunately, I found myself again. I tried to do both the barrister and solicitor at the same time. And I cleared the solicitor exam, but I did not clear the barrister exam. So I had to, and these exams are expensive. I think at the time when I was preparing for them, each exam was about 600 Canadian dollars. I believe the fees has gone up even more now. I don't know if it's like 900 or 1,000. So yeah, you want to don't do it all at once. Again, same advice. Just phase out your approach to one exam at one time. And after I cleared the barrister exam again, now came the final stage, which is you have the option here, like how in India you have to article. I believe CAs they have to article for 1.5 years. Company secretaries also have some kind of articling component. In Canada, you have to, as a lawyer, article for about 10 months, or you can get a waiver or an abridgment. So, waiver is where they completely waive the requirement, abridgment is where they reduce it, or 10 months. Like in my case, what I did is a program called the Law Practice Program. So, that law practice program, after all my exams and everything were done, allowed me to work for a company for 4 months and also do a training for 4 months, and that satisfied the articling requirement. So I'll reiterate the whole process in case you're like, wait, what's going on? So many exams, so many things. So initially it was the assessment report, which was the NCA assessment. That told me that I need to give 5 exams. You clear the 5 exams, then after that, you have to give 2 further exams. You clear those exams, and then you do the articling. I could have applied for a waiver, but everybody advised against it. They said that you're still about a juniorish lawyer. You have only about 3 to 4 years of experience at that time. So don't, you're not like coming in with 10, 12 years of experience. So probably it's best that you start here at from the beginning again, and essentially consider yourself like a new freshly minted lawyer. So I said, okay, all right, I'm going to start looking at this law practice program, which seems like a good program. And it was, because it essentially gave me some training, practical skills, learning how the arguments are made here, how are contracts read here, all those little things that are eventually helpful for you in your practice. And so doing that law practice program finally then brought me to the point where I could be called to the bar. So yeah, it was a long process. It was an expensive process, but eventually finally I'm a lawyer. I'm called to the bar here, and now I can work for a company. I can work for a law firm. I can take my own cases. So it does give you that privilege, but yeah, it does take some time. So whenever anybody asks me, I'm planning to look at Canada as a as an option. I always tell them that you need to be very patient. You need to be in it for the long haul, and the process can tire you out a little bit. So just make sure you're super motivated, and you're budgeting, because it's also expensive. You have to pay for study materials. You have to pay for exams. You have to budget your time. You may be working full time, and you're tired. You need to manage your schedule. So all those things are there. I remember most of my exams, I used to take them in very odd hours of the night. I would take them at like 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. because it would be evening here in Canada, and I was, sitting on that side of the world. So you have to factor time difference as well sometimes when you're giving these exams. So maybe choose what I would advise, choose a schedule that works for you. And if you can try to take some time off before all of these exams, absolutely. If you're working, then it's a little more challenging. But if you're still in the student phase of things, it's much easier to do so. Um, I'll also talk about like working here and living here. But before I get into that part, I wanted to stress on one thing. I find that a lot of people that are considering Canada, they don't necessarily have a clear plan on how they're going to get here. So let's say they think about, okay, I'm going to do these NCA exams. I'm going to be a a lawyer in Canada. But when I ask them, hey, how are you planning to actually, like, what's your immigration plan? And they don't necessarily have a clear idea of how they're going to get here. So there are a couple of ways. Of course, you can either come here as a student, you can come here on a work permit. So either you come here on a study permit, a work permit, or you come here on a permanent residence. So why I stress that, if there's anything that you take away from this webinar, it would be this: your immigration plan and how you're going to come here almost goes hand in hand with your plan to qualify here as a lawyer. If you have a plan that you're going to give all these exams, you're going to get all the material, you're going to do well, but you don't have this other important component, which is how are you actually going to get here, then you may find yourself at a crossroad where you either are getting delayed, your PR or your work permit plans are not working out, or maybe you have to come here as a student and then work your way to eventually become a permanent resident. So I think it would be dishonest of me to tell anybody who's thinking of coming here that without this important immigration component, the other half cannot really work. So you have to keep that in mind, that yes, I need to work on my plan on how I'm going to come here. Maybe what you do is you apply for the NCA assessment and then you think of coming here as an LLM student. Or perhaps if you have a like a master's degree and you have some years of work ex and you meet the immigration criteria, you can come here as a permanent resident. Or perhaps there's some other way. You can talk to many immigration consultants, advisors that are there. And so make sure you factor that in as well. And that's an important piece of the puzzle. I think before I get into life here as a lawyer and what, like some other parts which are also important, the post qualification life, I think I can pause to take some people who are raising their hands. If anybody wants to ask any question, I'm happy to. Okay, yeah. So why don't you go ahead, Danish? Do you have a question?
I believe they don't have a speaking right, but whoever has a question can put the question in the chat box. We'll take it up.
Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah, that'll be helpful.
Before they put a question, Samarth, I must tell you that it's very intimidating. I mean, you've given too much on a plate. Had I
Yeah.
had thoughts of coming to Canada, I would think 100 times now. So I,
Yeah.
just to bring one of the question, I wanted to say, I'm more keen to know that with all the struggle, is it all worth it? Now that you,
Yeah, I'm coming to that part actually.
so there's one
Where
question. What is
yeah.
so there was this question. What was the name of the podcast that you used to study for the exams?
I think if you go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, just click Canadian Constitutional Law, Canadian Administrative Law. Let me see if I can pull it up on my phone as we speak. Sorry, Canadian Administrative. Hmm. Yeah. Sorry, what's the name of this podcast? Yeah, so it's by this professor. His name, I'll just type his. I'm allowed to chat here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I might have to change the setting so everybody can see the message. So yeah, this professor was Craig Forces. I don't really know his last name, but I guess he's a professor of administrative law, and he used to teach or currently teaches at the University of Ottawa. It was a pretty good they'll just break down the concepts, and so you can check it out. It's there on, like, all the episodes are free. So but to go back to your question, is it all worth it? I think so, yes, because it's a very long process, very expensive process. It takes a lot of your energy, but once you cross the finish line, you have a career waiting for you where you have quite a lot of flexibility. So let's say somebody comes from, like, let's say, I'm assuming everybody's from India here. So if somebody comes as an Indian law student and they want to practice as a private practice lawyer, but they're unsure of where, like, life will take them, right? So yeah, this gives you a new market. It gives you the ability to bring whatever expertise you have and try it out. You have the ability to freelance and build some clientele of your own. there is, I would say, a little less competition than there is in some of the other countries like India itself, just really because of the numbers. And also with the US and Dubai and London, these are more saturated markets. It's definitely that it's competitive, but I would say it's lesser than these places. So that's one huge plus. Secondly, you get a lot of freedom to to do whatever you want. Like if you want to change your path and you want to try something different, the folks here, they do have some biases against people who are coming from outside. But once you get an opportunity to prove your worth, like through your work and through the work, like whatever you submit, or just generally from your expertise and interviews, you can overcome those initial barriers. So I would say yes, it is worth it. Canada does offer some good work-life balance. I think generally I've seen that people do respect your schedule, they respect your time a lot more than maybe some other countries would. And generally, we I think as Indians, we do, like, we're hardworking, and so we can take advantage of that and really go the extra yard here. Like if you have to work after 6 p.m., 7 p.m., and you can really use that to your advantage. And so I think that's where these systems are very like ripe for people from outside to come in and then they can hit the ground running. But mostly, if I had to say, after all these exams and all this money and time, you get this ticket to doing whatever you want, and you can do it in a new system where where there is work life balance, where there is some ability to kind of work hard and get the returns. So yeah, so I would say yes, it is worth it, but it's a lot of hard work till that point. So yeah.
So there's
uh,
another
I,
question that can you share the
yeah, sure.
website for NCA exams, please? Is there a
Yeah, yeah, sure, absolutely. I'll just try to pull it up once. Yeah, this is their main link, and within this you can go and you can check out the tabs, and you can see so you'll get to see the schedules, the exam outlines and samples, the syllabus, like I was talking to you. So this should be your starting point. And in fact, this is also where, if you click on the tab where it says process, you can start the assessment process as well, from here itself.
and there's this fourth year student who's asking, as a fourth year student, what immigration plan would you suggest us to take?
Yeah, so definitely as a fourth year student, um, going on a PR is not really possible for you at this point because you wouldn't have enough points. It would also take you a while to graduate, right? It would take you about a couple of years before you finish your fourth year, your fifth year, and then so I would say in that case, probably the LLM or coming here as a student is the best idea, because of course that's also not without expense and time and energy, but probably that coming here as a student, getting an opportunity to earn a local tag or a brand name here, and then growing within the system, building your connections, building your network. I think that would be my advice for somebody who's, let's just say, like a fourth year student and still in that student mode. Yeah, so I would say if you can come here as an LLM student, like for a very good university, Osgood, or and typically, as a general student, we have connections with all these, or MOUs. So probably you can take advantage of that brand name, and so yeah, I would say target some of the good university. I think Queens, we used to have a partnership, we probably already do. So yeah, take advantage of that network, and use that to come here as a student, and then you get an opportunity to really grow within this system. Because, like in my case, I did not come with a local badge of approval, right? But I did the law practice program, which gave me it was in partnership with Ryerson, which is now known as Toronto Metropolitan. So that really helped because you get a university's resources, their career services, and so all that is quite helpful. So yeah,
Uh,
probably that would be my advice. Yeah.
so there's another very interesting question which says that if you intend to work only in corporate in Canada, do we still
Mhm.
have or write both barrister and solicitor exam?
Yes, that's a good question, actually. A lot of people have that question, that if I, like, let's say I just want to be an in-house counsel, or I want to be a corporate lawyer. Unfortunately, yes. you have to still, in order to have any privilege of working, whether it's in a company or doing any kind of law, you need to still finish these basic steps. If I can give you any solace, I actually think that the preparation of those two exams in particular was actually very helpful, because when you're a practicing lawyer, you need to know a little bit about everything. That's why we do all these subjects in law school, right? We teach students a little bit of criminal law, a little bit of constitutional law, evidence. And so what that exam process does is they distill everything for you in, like, a nutshell. And so it's actually like a very good crash course, because think about it, you're coming into a completely new system. You don't necessarily, unless you've actually been an LLM student here, um, generally you will find that, okay, I don't know anything about, like, the public law, or I don't know anything about like the constitutional law or the charter here, which is like very important. Or even sometimes, they have certain cases on aboriginal rights and those sorts of things. So those are slightly sensitive issues, and it's like a very good crash course that you get. And so I wouldn't be, of course, it's intimidating when you think about it, but think about the benefit also from a practice perspective. Then I think you'll be a little bit more motivated and less scared. Like, okay, I can do this. Like, yeah, and I'll also benefit from it.
Coming to our other question is also, if you want
Yeah.
to settle in Canada, what is the risk to reward ratio? And in addition,
Okay.
some more fruitful for a fresh lawyer put off for
Yeah.
graduate law school, something.
Uh, okay. So I think the risk to reward ratio is, I'll be honest, my maths is not very good. That's probably why I became a lawyer. So I'll just answer that question in terms of risk and reward. I don't know what the ratio would be. But I would say that, of course, there is some high risk. You are spending a lot of time, spending a lot of money. It's a new system. You have to prove yourself all over again. And so there's some risks. It may not work out, and you may have to. Then you're like, okay, I'm stuck with this degree, or how do I get that time back, right? The years that I spent, or the money that I've spent. So yes, there is a definitely a risk, a quantifiable risk in either time or money. The reward would be that, um, if you are able to find your niche, like let's say you are a corporate lawyer, an intellectual property lawyer, and you are able to do the kind of work that you want to do, but you have less competition, you have more access to clients, you have a little bit better work life balance. So something in your practice has to click, right? Either you are able to find the work that you want to do, either you are able to enjoy your work and your life and everything, or it simply just goes belly up, and you're not able to find anything. So that usually doesn't happen. It may take some time, but you'll eventually get to that balance of what you want to do. So like in my case, if I use again my example, I want to be an in-house lawyer, right? I worked in private practice, but I felt like, okay, this is a slightly more fast-paced, aggressive climate. You have to like have this billing pressure. I didn't enjoy that. So I like working for a company where it's a little more sedate. You have to learn only the policies and procedures of one company. That's just how I enjoy practicing as a lawyer. And I found that in the in-house world. Now, somebody might say, well, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. I want to do like X things. Then maybe yes, Canada may restrict you in some way. Like sometimes I know when I speak to people who are very interested in arbitration, and their argument is, well, Canada doesn't quite have a lot of arbitration options, and there's not much for me to do there. So you need to take that call as well, that okay, if I go in this direction, will I be able to practice my interest area, or will I have to take a backseat, and I want to do IP, but maybe it's better for me to go to California or New York, but here now I'm thinking of Canada, so I'll have to do something else. So yes, the risk to reward ratio has to keep all these things in mind, right? If I am really passionate about X area of law and I'm not able to practice it in this country, then for me the ratio is completely out of whack, right? But if I am actually getting to do a little bit of what I want to do, and I can also have a good work life balance, compete, so it depends on you as an applicant. One thing I will say is Canada is getting very expensive, and there are also very high taxes here. So initially, what happens is, the returns that you have monetarily may not be as high. So you may think that, okay, if I work in India, I'm going to make X amount, And you may think, oh, wow, I'm actually making a lot more here. But by the time you factor in the rent, the tax, the food, all the expenses, you're like, oh, where did all that money go? So, so yeah, you have to keep that in mind as well. I think that is an important component. But as you grow with experience, as you change jobs, as you build what we call as Canadian experience, that differential then becomes more favorable. But initially, it hits quite hard, and you're like, okay, well, maybe I was better off, in my hometown. But that's going to be a case wherever you go, right? Because eventually, you may be paying for your own rent. There are taxes which are, I think it's almost similar percentages in all developed countries. But yes, Canada is getting very expensive. The inflation and all those things are, and they've recently raised their interest rates as well. So people are finding that things are becoming less affordable. But if you keep basing your decisions on the economy, you may miss the boat in terms of like actually coming here, and because right now they're open for immigration, there are opportunities that may not be the case a few years down the line, or maybe it will. So it's important to keep that also in mind, that you don't want to miss the boat, while it's still there. So
Uh, there's this, what kind of LLM distinguish the requirement for us to give us NCA?
yeah, so it's usually the LLM in Canadian common law, or typically what you can see is like within the description itself, it will say this satisfies the NCA requirements. So you can just Google it, or you can reach out to me. I'll put in my email. We can decipher it together. One caveat I would say is, like whenever somebody asks me, okay, should I do this? I would say yes and no. Yes, because it's a great way to knock off the NCA requirements. And I would say no, because you're also depriving yourself of the opportunity to study a specialized area of law. Like, maybe you want to do an LLM in corporate, or IP, or something that you're really interested in. And honestly, if you're a general student, you can easily knock the NCA. I don't mean to be overconfident or anything, but you can easily do it. You don't need to, you don't need to use your LLM degree and that precious time and money just to knock these exams out. Because let's say each exam costs you $500. Doing 5 exams is $2,500, right? Ideally, if you pass all of them in the first go. And the LLM degree is going to cost more than that 10 times at least, right? The LLM degree is going to be at least $30,000 or $40,000. So think about it. Would you rather spend $2,500, and potentially, even if, like for me, I failed one of them, I had to spend a little bit more to clear it, or would you spend all that money and try to just get these requirements, which you can probably do, if you just put your heads down and study. So just think about it. It's obviously a very biased opinion. Some people may disagree, and but I think, yeah, people can do it. We are used to writing some tough exams. There are hypotheticals within our system. It's not like, there are colleges where people don't go to class and all that, so they might have issues with NCA exams. But yeah, I don't think that's the case with people within this ecosystem. So yeah.
So there was this question where they asked that would it be required to have a work ex before coming to Canada for an NCA exam?
No, not at all. You don't need. So the only factor, your academic, experience, like where you studied and what courses you've taken. So, like to give you an example, people in the UK, right? They go typically when they're 18, 19 for a 3-year LLB, and then by the time they're like 22, they come back to Canada and they apply for their NCA exams. So anybody with a BBA LLB or BA LLB with that 5-year integrated course, or even like me doing the 3-year LLB, once you've completed your law degree, should be good enough to apply for the NCA assessment. And I think what they allow now is, if you're unable to get to your law school and send your transcript, is you can even send a secure transcript to them for evaluation. The only thing is that it just takes a little bit of time, so it might take a few months for them to get back.
So one of the students is asking, could you please suggest us a good university in Canada for LLM?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's quite a lot of them. There's Osgoode, which is York University. Their law school is called Osgoode. Um, University of Toronto is like very good. So University of Toronto and Osgood, these are like the two top ones. If you're interested in aviation, airspace law, I think McGill has a fantastic program. But McGill is in Montreal, which is sort of the French part of Canada. So that's something to be aware of. That while there's plenty of English that's spoken, that's just something you want to keep in mind if you're thinking about that. So I think, yeah, I would say these are there. And then Queens is also pretty good, so you can look at Queens. But if you're looking at like the top programs, and um I would say, yeah, these would be like there's also UBC, Peter Allard School of Law. So I would say, yeah, UBC, Osgood, UFT, and if you're interested in that niche area, then McGill. So these are like the three, four colleges. Yeah.
There's one more question that we have, which I want to make. It says, how much of law and legal education that we learn here in India would be needed or required if we want to work in Canada?
Um, so I would say that that's a very good question actually. How much of it is really useful, right? Um, the concepts don't change, right? So if you have a basic, let's say, assignment of contract or termination of contract or indemnity, limitation of liability, or some concepts that are very transportable and universal. So if you can understand how a contract is read, how it's edited, how it's redlined, that's a transferable skill that you would carry. If you know how to, let's say, draft up some documents which are used in a litigation, so those would be things that you can easily adapt here. And if you are interested in building your own practice, you can do, like what are very common here are small claims matters, which are usually matters under $35,000. And people typically, like, somebody goes to a mechanic, their car suddenly stops working, they now decide to sue, and they come to somebody like you, something like that. So yeah, so I would say all that knowledge is good. Of course, not all of it will be transportable because when you study Indian laws, you do read specifically to India like legislation. But if you can take the broad concepts in your mind, then and you can think about it, it is definitely usable. Because let's not forget that the Canadian system is also derived in many ways from the British system, and so is the Indian system. So there's some parallel there. So yeah, you can definitely bring a lot of that knowledge here and potentially use it to your benefit. Sorry, I apologize. I have a puppy that is barking. Oh, I think I've lost your sound.
Can you
Oh
hear?
yeah, now it's better. Yeah,
Yes.
now I can hear you.
Is
Yeah.
that are these NCA exams as expensive as barrister solicitor exam?
No, they're cheaper. So I think each NCA exam is about $500, and the barrister solicitor, when I gave it, was 600, but I think the cost has gone up. So definitely, it's more expensive, and it's more difficult as well.
So would our LLB CGPA have any weightage on our process or any disqualification or maybe as a scholarship?
No, it wouldn't. All they really care about is that you have actually just passed and you've cleared your degree. They wouldn't give, like, the NCA won't give you a scholarship, but if you're applying for an LLM program, they may give you some kind of merit scholarship based on your grades. So it depends who you're talking about. But if you're talking about, okay, I have this great GPA, will it help me make this process a little less onerous? No, it won't.
This webinar is a way for us to introduce you to the students and if they intend to get some mentoring there. But, the question are so up close and personal. They're asking, would you be able to share notes for NCA in case you have any referred for the giving?
Yeah. The only catch with sharing my notes is that they will be a little outdated because I gave these exams in 2020, 21, and the syllabus may have changed. So I can absolutely point you in the right direction. I can put my email, and I know I can share some links. I can even share some of the notes that I have, but I will caution you that they may have changed because what the NCA body does is they keep changing the syllabus every couple of years. They change the cases, they change the subject matter. So you can usually rely on the notes of somebody that was like within 6 months or 1 year. But if you go so far back, it's a little risky. But I'm happy to share whatever I have. I don't have any issues, and I think yeah, the idea was to become a mentor for whoever is thinking of coming here, and hopefully you can learn from my examples or whatever journey. So yeah, so happy to help anybody in that regard.
There's one of the student who's saying that one of the students is saying that I intend to permanently stay in Canada. In that process,
Okay.
I need to have any work experience from India, or it's absolutely fine.
You don't need WorkX, but like let's say you're coming here as a student and you're looking for opportunities and you go into an interview. At that point, if you can say that, yes, I may not have worked, but here's what I learned from all of the internships that I've done, it will help you in making a case for, because the employer just wants to see that okay, you know something and you can hit the ground running, and you will reduce that training period or that time that you take to absorb and learn. So I think if you can answer that through some kind of reassurance through the skills you've learned, you don't need WorkX, right? But if you have it, it will help definitely, because that, let's say I work for a year at a very good law firm in India and then I decide to come, you do have some transferable skills. You have some clients that you may have managed, and so all that helps you in making a case essentially, right? Now the other side of the argument is that if you work for too many years and you come and you, like kind of like how I did, if you come and you start the process all over again, some of that experience may not be counted. It may get written off and you may find yourself having to start off as a fresher all over again. So that can also, so maybe get some experience but don't get too much, because you'll anyway have to come here and reestablish yourself. I think that would be the probably the sweet spot of how to plan your strategy, if I had to. Sorry, again, I think you were on mute. Yeah, I think you went on mute.
Since we've talked enough about Canada and all good that you've said, they're asking, is there
Yeah,
any country you would suggest if not
any
Canada?
other country? Yeah, absolutely. There are, I would suggest Dubai, and I would suggest the US if possible. So Dubai, simply because it's very close to India. That's one thing. So if ever you're working in the UAE, you want to visit your family, you want to go see whoever, or just take a break, or so that proximity does help. Dubai has great weather, and not the summer months, but usually, it's very good weather. It's tax free, at least for now, and typically for lawyers, you'll find not so much on the court side, but like if you are planning to work for a company, or maybe you want to work for like a fintech hub, or like, there's lots of exciting opportunities there. So I would say, because of the proximity to India, and because you don't have to go there and do an LLM, or necessarily spend a lot of money on education or exams, it's easier, like on the basis of an Indian LLB you can find a job there, and you can work. And so I would say yes, Dubai is one place you can consider. And also the salaries are pretty good because there's no income tax, so it goes directly to your pocket, like whatever you earn here in Canada. By the time the tax is gone, you're like, wait, this is way different from what I was supposed to get. Okay, well, how do I manage my life? So but that's the same dynamic in the US or in England or wherever. US, I would say, because I feel like it's a very, I think after the UK, it's a very big legal market. So simply because I don't know if it's all lawyers on this call, but assuming there is, yeah, US will give you more opportunities. And also some of these states in the US are really big economies. Like I think California, I don't know what exact number they are, but they're in the top 10 economies in the world. I may be wrong, but I know it's pretty big. So you have that much more opportunity. So I would say yes, these places are great. But where Canada scores a little bit higher than these places is the stability of being a permanent resident here, and then eventually working your way to a Canadian passport. So there, Canada, in that regard, the US and Dubai may be a little less open than perhaps Canada is. So you have to weigh your options. What are you looking at? Are you looking at I'm just going to work for a few years, I'm going to make as much money as I can possibly, and I'm going to come back to India? Sure, explore the US, explore Dubai, look at Singapore, look at the UK. Short stint, then I'm back. If your goal is, well, I really want to get, like somebody on this call, I think earlier asked, like, I want to become a, like, I just want to be there permanently. So then it's a very different motivation you have. Then you may have to look at all these 7 exams and all the ordeal that I was talking about, because then your goal is, okay, I want to be like, I want to change my passport, I want to change my citizenship. So yeah, that's why it goes back to what I was saying, is that, you have to keep your immigration goal as well in mind, because
So,
that can have a direct bearing on where you want to go. Sorry, yeah, you were saying something.
no, I was just saying that this way the question will keep pouring, but the intent was to introduce you as a mentor, and which you
Oh
have.
yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah. So now that we just one last question, Samar, and the
Sure.
process goes in a way that after this question, even if some student has few more questions, they can write
Mhm.
me, and I can share that over an email or WhatsApp, and if
Yeah,
whichever
yeah,
you would be
absolutely,
comfortable. Just to sum
absolutely.
it up, Samar, which is the best field in law, being as a solicitor or practicing in a corporate, what would you
Mhm.
suggest? What is the best field in law to practice in Canada?
I would still say, maybe I'm biased, but I would say being a corporate lawyer, because simply, as you know, you are, like, you have enough skills that you can either work for a law firm or you can go work in a legal department. And like, if you understand how contracts work, if you understand how to edit them, read them, give your comments, give your feedback. That process you can do whether you are practicing on your own, whether working for a company or going. So your options are much more higher. Having said that, I do think that in Canada, you can also be pretty good if you are very good at litigation. So if somebody enjoys representing people in court, or if you enjoy like drafting motions and submitting like a plaintiff statement of claim, there is a very good side, and that's pretty active here as well, because people do keep having everyday disputes, like I mentioned, that mechanic example, so many more. So I would say corporate, yes, but if you really love litigation, then by all means, go pursue that as well, and it's pretty active here as well. So yeah, that would be my quick 2 cents on that.
It was one of those enlightening sessions, and the questions are still pouring. But since we are short of time,
Yeah.
and
Okay, sure, sure.
yes, so whoever has any question could write to me. My email ID is
Yeah.
hr@jju.edu.in, and wherever I feel that I'll connect you with someone. Is that okay with you, Samad? That's
Yeah,
okay.
that's fine. No worries at all.
But thank you so much. Thanks a ton for such an enlightening session. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.